Hey everyone, welcome to the show. We're going to do another live impromptu session here. I had my equipment set up again. I figured, why not? It's Thursday, almost 7 o'clock, 6:51, so we're pretty close to what I would normally do. We're just doing it on a Thursday this week. I was doing some recording. I'm showing some stuff about the load board, about some of the features that we use in Patriot Star. I'm going to do some training for the owner-operators that are leased to us, and I'm also going to release all the videos out to everyone else to show you what the differences are, what features are available. DAT is by far the best tool that we have, and not just for the load information, just the list of loads that most people use, but it's all the back office stuff, the analytics and the context and the different things that you can use on the backside. One of those that kind of came up today in some other groups, let me turn this down, and looks like I'm blowing people's ears out here, but one of the things that came up in some of the other groups was another product called Lane Honey. And there was another YouTuber that put some stuff out on Lane Honey and was comparing that to the rate view information that's just found on the load board. And he mentioned that rate view was a broker product, which it's kind of geared toward brokers, but carriers also can benefit from that. Now, we're a small fleet and we're a brokerage at Patriot Star. We've got both sides. We run two separate businesses, but we have one DAT account, and we have a higher version of the DAT Power load board. We have DAT Power Total Office with a whole bunch of cool features that, like an enterprise level service that most small carriers won't have, especially the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 truck carriers. I'm going to show you some of the cool stuff that we've got. I can show you also just the Trucker's Edge platform. And I linked the Trucker's Edge link if you want to have a 30-day free trial to that. It's in the description, definitely in the Facebook groups, but I'm going to make sure it's in the description for the YouTube video as well. But you get a 30-day free trial of that, and it'll be the Trucker's Edge platform from there. And I'll also show you what we use as the broker side. I'm not going to get too far into those tools yet because I've done some other videos on it that I'll release soon. But I do want to show you this rate view product specifically today. And call the number at the bottom of the screen. And if you have any lanes or anything that you want me to look up for you, I can kind of show you some of that as well. I'll show you how it works with just the load board first, and then I will show you how the rate view product is kind of standalone, how it's separate from the load board. So let me figure out how to share my screen here. And if anybody has if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to talk about, I want to kind of focus on the load board stuff and the market and some of that stuff today. But if you have anything else about getting your own authority, about getting started, starting a business, accounting, getting set up, compliance issues, anything you want to talk about, feel free to call the number 917-889-9924. Number's at the bottom of the screen. Phone lines will be open through the whole broadcast tonight at any time. I don't have anybody screening calls, so when you call in, I will just have to bring you in directly. Looks like we've got a couple people in the room. Share this out if you're watching it. Let people know that we're going live. I haven't done a lot of live videos. I did one Sunday night, late at night, and I haven't been regular about doing any videos. But I'm gonna start bringing that back. So I don't have a whole lot of viewers on right now because I just kind of did this impromptu. But share this out, and we'll see what we can get on here. Again, if you have any questions, comments, feel free, throw it out there. Let me share this out to a couple of groups. Again, this is informal today. Anything that you want to talk about, we can talk about, but I'm going to share the screen here, show you the load board specifically, and show you what I use both as a carrier, primarily as a carrier. My primary operation is a carrier. We broker some stuff on the side. Our brokerage operations are a small fraction of what we do, but I have all the tools, and I have the connections and the things to show you how it works. Let's see. Looks like we have. Let me see what we can do here. I've got to be able to share the screens and run the phones and work the video and all that at the same time. So I do have 3 monitors here, but I've got stuff bouncing all over. So bear with me while I sort it all out. I got to figure out how to share the screen with you and run the phones at the same time. So I got to get this stuff on different screens. Let's see, and I want to check the Facebook stuff. So if you guys can help me out, share this out. If you found it in Facebook or if you found it on YouTube, like it, subscribe it, all that stuff. I know I haven't done a lot recently, so let's start firing this channel back up again. I'm probably doing a lot of this impromptu, informal stuff. This is easy. I have been doing some recorded stuff recently. That's why I've got the equipment set up. I got obviously the green screen behind me and this kind of stuff. I've got all that set up, so I figure, well, it's already set up. Why not just do live? When I do recorded stuff, I feel like it's got to be scripted, and I feel like everything's got to be, very proper and all that stuff. And you know what? This live stuff is just so much easier for me. Let's just do it live. The live stuff, you're probably going to get a lot more information from me. Ask the questions you want to know about. Call the number. I can get you on the air, 917-889-9924, and we can talk. Leave the messages or the information in the YouTube stream or on the Facebook stream or comments and so forth, and I will try to do what I can. I know there's one group in particular that I would definitely want to share this out to, because that was where we were discussing this earlier today. And that is over here in the rates and lanes group. The rates and lanes is really going to be my primary focus with most of what we're doing here. We're going to be talking about rates and lanes specifically. Obviously, we're going to be talking about Rateview. We're going to be using the load boards. I'm going to show you some of the information, how you can use it to benefit you. And I'm going to show you different features and levels of the load board as well. So we're going to dig into some of that. Give me a minute while we share this out so that we get some more people in here, because I definitely want to try to get as much information out as we can. Let's see. Any questions or comments? I'm just kind of waiting for people to join us. So, but anything you want to add, 917-889-9924, and we'll get that out there. And if somebody watching, I've got an air conditioner running behind me here, let me know if that's noisy, if you're hearing that, and I can dim that down. I had it off while I was doing some other recordings, and it was steamy in here, so I had to kick it back on. I forgot to turn it off before I went live. So if it's causing some issues, I can shut that back down. Let's see. And post it. Okay. All right. I used to do most of my stuff on Facebook, and I always thought Facebook was easier to use. There's a lot going on with this YouTube stuff, so I got to figure out where everything is. Looks like we have some people in the room, not as many as usual, but that's all right. Got a couple people on the phones as well. That's awesome. Anybody else? 917-889-9924. Phone lines will be open for the whole show. We're right at 7 p.m., so let's kick this off. So, let's make this happen if I can figure out how. Not using headphones. Okay, all is good. Well, as long as it's not, blaring loud, that's great. So, okay, let's see. I should be able to switch this to this. And most of you are familiar with the DAT Trucker's Edge platform. The DAT Trucker's Edge starts at around $39 a month. You get another version for $49 a month. And really at those levels, you're looking at the list of loads, right? It's just, if you're looking for loads on the load board and all you want to do is see the loads, call brokers, that's what you're going to get. It's basically, when you first log in, going to look something like this. You probably, if you're watching some of the other YouTubers out there, probably look something like this, because most of the other guys are running just one or two trucks or so forth, and this is the version they have. If you go, and hold on, I already clicked on something that most of them won't have. So because I am a broker and a carrier, I have both sides of the load board. I can post loads, I can search trucks, and both sides of it. So this right here is the post load. A broker would click that to post a load. Below that is search trucks. So as a broker, when I have a load and I'm trying to find a truck to haul my load, I would click this, search trucks. Those are the broker tools primarily. Down below that, you've got post a truck. Now, on our carrier side, that's what we do most of the time. We post the trucks that we have available. And below that, of course, is search loads. So we'll go to search loads, and we've got the normal search criteria here. We'll do something very basic that we know is going to return some cheap type rates. Okay, so I'm based out of Florida primarily. The brokerage is in Florida. Our carrier is in Tennessee. So let's look at some loads going back and forth. So we'll look at something coming out of Orlando, Florida. Deadhead, 150 miles. Destination, we'll say Chattanooga, Tennessee. We'll do just a general van. We'll just leave weight and length open. Look back. This is 24 hours to look back. We're looking at today, just stuff for today. And we'll hit search. Even on my version, because I have the higher levels, you might see some features that I'm not even aware that the lower end has. When you have the login versions that I have, you can log into Trucker's Edge or the Power, and I'm going to show you Power in just a minute. But let's look at this one, Jacksonville to Smyrna, Georgia. So this gives you some basic information. Look over here on the right side of the screen, Jacksonville, Florida to Smyrna, Georgia. They posted it 29 minutes ago, and they say average days to pay is $478. The trip is 362 miles. And below that, factor this load, and here's all the load information. Let me see if I can find one. This is actually not the version that I use most of the time, so I'm actually not entirely familiar with this version. But let me just scroll down to a couple. Here's one that has Palmetto, Florida to Forest Park, Georgia, and it has a posted rate. So we know the basics here. We've got posted rates on the left side, the offer rate. That's never the price tag. That never means that they're going to move it for that. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. Whatever's posted, one of my pet peeves is in the Rates and Lanes group when someone takes a screenshot of a posted load and shares it out as, look what they posted, that's a horrible rate, or somebody posted something that was obviously they either typed the weight of the load in the rate column, or they typed, it was just a typo, fat fingered it, and they had something like $44,000 to move a load. Maybe it was a 44,000 pound load. They put it in the wrong spot. Maybe it was $440 and they put a couple extra zeros. Who knows? Put 44,000. They posted that, and people were saying, well, they should be held accountable. They should have that. Those loads, those offers are absolutely worthless. I wish there was a way to just turn the offer rate column off on these load boards. I don't want to look at the posted rates. I don't care about the posted rates. I find that completely useless. And if you watch some of my videos from before about the anchor effect, I find that completely, as a carrier, I find that completely worthless and misleading. As a broker, I absolutely love it because I know I can move loads faster and cheaper using that feature. Because most carriers don't negotiate nearly as hard when they see a posted rate. So, that being said, I know this is a live load board. It is after hours, 7:05 p.m. East Coast time. So we're probably not going to get a lot of activity right now, but this is a live load board. I'm not blocking anything out. I'm not, I'm showing you all the details. So let's look at this one here. $500, 15-day average is $617. So that being said, if the 15-day average is $617, and that's another thing I should mention, with my level, I have 15-day averages. With a $39 a month version, you'll see 90-day averages. Well, 90-day average is much different information, obviously, than 15-day averages. 15-day averages, by the time you get the invoicing in, you get everything squared away, 15-day averages are relatively accurate. There's even a version that can go down to 7-day averages, and that's so specific that I don't necessarily find a lot of value in that. I think 15 days is where it's at, and so that's what I'm sticking with. But 15-day averages, obviously the rate per mile, they're offering 500, it's 482. They're offering just a hair over $1 a mile, and it's not a whole lot better even on the 15-day average. But this is what the brokers are paying the carriers. So I just want to point this out. Now, this is the version that the Trucker's Edge version, some of the lower level stuff. I'm going to switch over to my version here. This is DAT Power. This is what I use most of the time. I believe this starts at, $150 a month. The version I use, if you got it standalone, is about $250 a month. I also have add-on features on top of that, like rate view and lane makers and things. Those are additional features. I'm going to show you. I am going to dip into rate view. I think that the extra money on the load board that's the reason I have it. It's more than worth it. Not only do I have it, but I think it's important enough that I give it to every one of our owner-operators. Everybody in the office has it. This is the reason that I want to have a load board. I don't even need a load board to dispatch the trucks. I have enough contacts, enough brokers that I can call without a load board, through email blasts that we get, through other sources. I don't need a load board anymore. Looking at the list of loads is secondary. Yes, I want my drivers to post their stuff available. Yes, I want to look at the board and call on stuff when I'm searching for something. But the list of loads, to be very blunt about it, it's just really all it is. A list of loads is not the most important thing that I'm going to look at here. And that's why I have this version. That's why I spend so much money on it. With all the seats that I have, I'm spending 4 figures just on load boards. And that's all DAT. I've had the others, and I found them absolutely worthless. They're too slow, especially, if you look at Truck Stop is the next biggest competitor. It's too slow. Every load you click on opens a whole brand new window. The information, the layout is okay, but I'm not sure that it's nearly as accurate as this. DAT contributes to the freight futures market. They contribute their information. The rate view information is huge in DAT, and it's accurate, as accurate as it can be. And I'll tell you how they get that information, and they're not trying to hide it. They tell you where they get the information. Unlike some of the other companies out there, they tell you what they do, and they have to narrow it down and use some analytics to weed out the outliers and the garbage. But it's overall fairly accurate. All right, and comments are coming in. I've got a couple of our owner operators are here as well. If you have anything that you want to add to this, 917-889-9924. Now, again, what really spurred me to do this was this comment about the rate view versus things like Lane Honey. And I've looked at Lane Honey. I don't want to necessarily tear them down, but I want to do some comparisons. We're going to check some things out here. And by the way, for those of you that happen to be driving right now, you can also listen, 917-889-9924. You can listen through the phone. You don't have to be streaming a video while you're driving. It's safer. That's one of the reasons I do it this way, 917-889-9924. When you're on the line, if you press 1, it will bring you on the air. I can have 250 people live at the same time on the air. So go ahead and call in. And the phones are going to be live for a couple hours yet. I set it for a longer time because on Sunday night we got cut off. But going back to the load board here, and pardon me while I go back and forth between the phone service and the load boards. So going back to DAT, total power, office, enterprise level. Top left is the list of loads. That's the load board. That's the home page of what you see right here. Next is the rates. This is rate view, and I'll dip into that in a minute. And then the directory, which is a whole other topic. A great place to find brokers that you want to work with, check credit scores, and various history on brokers. DAT onboarding, this is a broker tool. This is not something that a carrier would use, but DAT onboarding is an electronic version similar to RMIS. Carriers, rather, if I had a load and I was going to tender it to a carrier, if I had sent them through the onboarding system, they could fill out the contract and so forth, all online. I actually choose not to use that. I prefer to, just as I preach about reading contracts and things, I prefer to give our carriers paper contracts so they can actually take a look, a PDF version, they can see what they need to do. When I set up with a new broker, I don't remember the last time we did not have to make a change to their contract in one way or another. So there's no way that an electronic version would satisfy what I think should be required. On the right side of the screen, we've got your little toolbox here. When you click on the toolbox, brings this drop down. Lane Makers is a super powerful tool. I'm going to do a whole show on that. The hot market map, I'm going to click into that here in just a minute. Quick rate search. This is kind of a small clipped version of Rate View. We'll talk about that. The trend lines, this is actually just a link to the free information that you can get where you can see monthly trends of what each segment, van, flatbed, reefers are doing, whether it's going upwards trend or downwards, and the average for, used to be weekly and they still kind of tender it weekly, but it's really a monthly average that they see over there. DAT directory, back, same link on the top left, onboarding and Carrier Watch. Carrier Watch is a system to where, just like the DAT directory, you can kind of look and see what the brokers are doing and check their credit and so forth. Carrier Watch is the opposite. As a broker, I can kind of look at some of the carriers' information. I look at their FMCSA registration stuff and so forth, and that's kind of handy as well. And then these are more down here are more information, just kind of advertisement stuff. Factoring, DAT assurance is their guarantee about getting paid, so forth. Cargo insurance. The zone map is what we're going to look at here. It's just to break down what is on the hot market map. So let's click into the hot market map, because everything that's in the DAT program, all the rates that you see are information that's pulled from RateView. So I want to first talk about what we see on the load board platform, and then we'll broaden it to see what we see on the actual RateView program itself. RateView, the benefits of RateView are you can see longer periods of time, really up to a year, and the trends and so forth. And we're going to get into that. But I really want to, toward the end of this, we're going to compare RateView versus Lane Honey. And I'm not going to take too long to get there either, so bear with me. So click into the hot market map. Most of you have seen this. If anybody has any comments about a market you want me to look up on my level, or RateView, or a lane that you want to see, or if you want my thoughts on a market, just let me know, and I'll go ahead and plug that in. I'm trying to watch everything at once, so just let me know if there's let me know what we can do for you. All right. So this here on this big screen in the middle, I got to stay focused on the middle screen. This is the DAT hot market map. Most of you have probably seen this or seen screenshots of this. The darker the color, the better the load to truck ratio is, the better for the carrier that is. So there are more loads than trucks in the darker areas. So if you click on each individual market, now I should also elaborate a little bit. You have a version of this on every platform. And I believe they've got this now to where it's available just about to everyone. It may not even be, you may not even have to have a load board subscription, the DAT load board, to get it. Marketmaps.dat.com. You may need to log into this. I'm not 100% certain on that. They've changed how it's the information has been put out there. You used to have the lowest level would be just a state level version, and to give you that idea, you've got a state level, which breaks down each individual state, which is really not all that accurate because, for example, Florida, which is always the most extreme example, North Florida could be pretty good and South Florida could be absolutely horrible, and it would be good to understand that. So you can break it down into market area. Market area will give you basically like a 3-digit zip code area. So if you're our zip code here, 32703, the 327 is really the zip area, and in some cases that might overlap some others, but by and large, that's how they broke it down. And if you go back to the zone map, it's how you find out what that is. It's a PDF you download. So, and again, you look at this. Now, if you hover over and click into any of the particular zones, South Florida, for example, it shows you over here available load to truck vans, 1.3 loads to every truck. Available loads to the area, 543. Available trucks in the area, 406. So getting out there, every single truck could get a load, but it's not a great demand for those. But it's not completely white, so it has absolutely been worse. More often than not in South Florida, that southern Miami market is just pure white on this map. So things are starting to pick up. Things might be changing. If you were to look at this map every single day and you compared it day over day over day, and you start to see the colors on this map changing in certain areas, you can start to see what's developing. So, we've got Valentine's Day coming up. We're going to start seeing some stuff coming out for the reefers, for flowers and things like that. Reefers directly compete with the vans, so you'll start seeing van rates pick up. And the load to truck ratios are linear with the change in rates as well. So, for example, if there is one load and one truck, they're going to pair up, and there's not a lot of demand. It's pretty much an equal opportunity. But if there are 10 trucks and one load, one truck will get a load, and the other 9 would have to deadhead out no matter what rate they're willing to take. So the load to truck ratio is horrible. That's how it is oftentimes in South Florida. Right now, it's about even, that 1-to-1 ratio. Seeing some notices pop up. All right, so let's look at the Laredo market. McAllen market. So South Texas, we can zoom into that. It's a little darker red, 6.5 to 1 over here, 557 loads to 86 trucks. That market should be decent for vans right now. You should be able to find a load out of there without struggling too hard, and you should get a decent rate. Now, that being said, it's good to look at the surrounding areas. The Austin market is pretty weak, less than 1 load per truck. So if there are a lot of trucks in the Austin market, it may not be beyond them to deadhead into the Laredo market. So while that's what's posted in that market currently, that's not to say that it's always going to be hard and fast that's going to be the greatest market. It's better to be there than to be in Austin, but it's not ideal. And excuse the alerts here. I don't know even how to turn that off right now. So that's how the hot market map works. And we can also look at flatbeds and reefers, and let's look at South Florida for the reefers. And this is the previous day. So this was yesterday, 24-hour period yesterday. That's a good indication of everything that happened yesterday. That's typically a good situation to be in. We could also look at current time, but remember, it's a little after 7 p.m. on the East Coast. Most brokers are closed. If they had any loads, they're not posting them right now, and you'll notice the stuff out west is what's posted. So part of the reason this is all dead in these areas is because the brokers went home for the day. They're not posting anything new. And there might be trucks that are still on the list, but it's not ideal. So that's current conditions. I don't find current conditions to be that accurate, because Drivers could be getting unloaded, and they don't post their truck until they get there, until they get unloaded. Or loads could be coming in at certain times of the day, typically 7, 8 a.m., maybe 11, 12 in the middle of the day, and then 3, 4, 5 o'clock. That's the premium times to book a load, and you'll see those trends going up and down as the brokers come in and post stuff. Before they go home for the day, they might post what they're working on for tomorrow. When they get up in the morning and they get in, open the office, they open up their cup of coffee, and then next thing they do is start posting loads. So you'll see spikes up and down throughout the day, just based on normal daily trends. You also have 4 time zones. So this is happening throughout the country at different times. You never know what's going to happen. So current, I don't necessarily think that's the greatest indication, but if you look at the previous day, that shows you really what the trend is. So I like to look at the previous day. And let's look at reefers really quick. For the previous day in reefers, so South Florida is a little warmer. Central Florida is still pretty weak. To zoom in here. So South Florida, 3.4 to 1. Now with reefers, again, this is knowing your market, knowing your customers, knowing what you're getting into. Anytime you have a van, 3 to 1 is typically a pretty good ratio. Less than 3 to 1, it starts to get a little tight. Reason for that is there are shippers that send their loads out to multiple brokers. So you'll have multiple brokers posting the same load. They're not doing it intentionally. They don't even realize that maybe broker A and broker B have the same load. They just both got the email. They both got an opportunity to bid on those loads, and they put them out there on the load board to try to find a truck. If they find a truck, the first to find a truck goes back to the customer and makes an offer, and they move the load. Typically with vans, that's a 3 to 1 ratio is a good margin of error to find a decent rate. I find that in the reefer market, a lot more of that happens. So you have a lot more, especially produce brokers and so forth. They're going to post that out to literally dozens of trucks or dozens of brokers or carriers or so forth. They're going to post it on the board. And what I find is typically 6 to 1 is a better market for reefers. So I would say that while the vans were just a little over 1 to 1 ratio, reefers 3.4 to 1 is about equivalent. So it's really probably a 1 to 1 ratio. That's not ideal. That's not a great market yet, but it's heating up. It's not pure white yet. The Panhandle seems to be doing pretty good. There's something coming out of the Panhandle for reefers. And we'll look more at the bottom of the screen here as well. Let's just go back to, let's see, market area for previous day, and let's just look at vans again. Something interesting to see when you look at the whole market, and I'm getting a little more into hot market map than I had anticipated. You'll see at the bottom of the screen, this is your daily. So we're looking at the previous day. This is what happened throughout the day. So you'll see 6 a.m., kind of moderate. That's the stuff that was left over. The brokers posted that before they went home for the day. That's still there the next morning. And it starts to peak, and then around 11 o'clock, it drops. This is your load to truck ratio. So why is that happening? Well, think about the trends. Remember, you have 4 time zones between 6 and 11. 11 o'clock, which is about 7 a.m. on the far west coast. You're going to start seeing brokers come in, start posting their loads. You're also going to have trucks that come in, start posting their trucks, or the trucks that were at the receiver first thing in the morning. They get unloaded. Maybe their appointment 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. They get unloaded around 9, 10, 11. That's when they post their trucks. So you see the dark gray here is your truck ratio, truck count, and the light gray is loads. So down here, there's not a lot. And then all of a sudden, 11 o'clock, everything gets blasted on there. That's the West Coast. Your whole country comes on all live right there. And you've got the trucks that are getting emptied out, the loads that are coming online for the first time for the day. 11 o'clock is when the market starts to really boom. So when is the best time to book your load? Well, the load to truck ratio is over here. You've got a lot less trucks posted and moderate loads posted. Remember, East Coast, most of brokers work on East Coast time. There's obviously some in every time zone, but the majority of them, good majority of them, work on the East Coast time. So those right here around the 9, 10 o'clock hour, probably one of the best times to book a load. 11 o'clock, your load to truck ratio drops. I guarantee you that brokers' phones start blowing up right about this time as well. and so do carriers that have their trucks posted in the markets where the brokers are having a hard time finding trucks. So that time frame when they're making this big switch is probably the best time to be looking for a load and to book something. If you wait till the end of the day, 5 o'clock, that's when everything obviously has tapered off and your load to truck ratio for the business hours has really tapered down to nothing. Again, this is why I like to look at previous day. You look at that 24-hour period and you see how the trend worked throughout the day, because that will probably be the trend today as well. If you're looking at yesterday, the trend today is not going to change much. So it's good to look at that. So that's your hot market map. I think this is a good 30,000 foot overview of everything. Absolutely not something to make an end-all be-all decision on. But if you're in a market where, say you're in the middle of the country and you want to move from, for example, we'll say the Midwest here. Maybe you're in Iowa where the Des Moines market, 2.9 to 1. Do you want to go to the Austin market or do you want to go to the Montgomery market? So that gives you some ideas of where should I go. And if I do go to either one of those markets, I don't care about going to the Austin market. I'd gladly go there. But you'd have to pay to get to the next good market, which, again, might be Laredo. And you're going to have to do some research to figure that out. But you need to figure out where to send your trucks. Figure out where to send your trucks. Figure out the best rate. And then we need to look at a little deeper. We're going to look at Rateview. So let's go back to the load board. We'll close out of this, and we'll go to the load board. Again, these are the broker features. I'm going to post a load. I can search trucks. I'm going to talk about how brokers post loads as well, so you understand, and maybe I'll even get that toward the end if anybody leaves comment and they want to see how a broker posts a load. Otherwise, we'll talk about how we post trucks and search for loads. So let's go to search for loads, and we will look at this information. We're going to go any van, standard van. Again, we're going to look out of Orlando. And we're going to look at, what did I say, Chattanooga before? Chattanooga, Tennessee. Available today, 150 miles from the origin, 150 miles from the destination. We're just going to we'll look at both full and partial loads. We'll leave length, we do a 53 feet. Weight, we don't need to limit that. We'll just see what's posted. Now, when we were on Trucker's Edge, if you remember, it by default had 24 hours. This, we're going to narrow it down. It's 2 hours. But let's just to be equivalent to what we were doing. Remember, we are after hours. So let's see what's out there. We're going to do a search. Now, looks a lot different than it did on Trucker's Edge. Remember, Trucker's Edge, we just had a little column on the right side of the screen, and we had the load list in the middle. This shows you a lot of information. This is our search. So let me scroll this down. Fortunately, I don't have any other searches going, which is good because that'll be easy. This is our search criteria. Orlando to Chattanooga, the date, today, 150 miles, and so forth. That's what we put in. Right off the bat, it gives you on that lane what the broker to carrier spot is. This is pulled from Rateview. If we click into this, it gives us a little more information. $550 per trip. It's 561 miles. It's less than $1 a mile average. Now, this is past 15 days. Lakeland market to the Chattanooga market for the past 15 days. Why is that different than what I saw on the Trucker's Edge platform? Because I have Rateview attached to this, and it's giving me more specific information. It's actually narrowing down my information even tighter than what I had on Trucker's Edge platform. So, even though I was looking at a 15-day average, I was looking at a regional average, maybe all of north and central Florida. Here I'm looking at a very specific Lakeland to Chattanooga market for the past 15 days. I think we were just a hair over $1 a mile on the Trucker's Edge version. Let's take a look real quick. I think I have it stood up. Yep. Let's see. Palmetto to Forest Park, which is a little different. And see right there. Okay. This is the information up here is what I'm seeing on my other version. Remember, I hardly ever use this version because this is the lower level than what I pay for. I have access to it, but I hardly ever use it. Lakeland market to Chattanooga market 15-day average, $555, 99 cents a mile. Range is 527 to 611. 94 cents to $1.09 a mile. 14 companies are reporting, and there's 62 reports. So that gives you an idea of how much information is there. Remember we were talking about lane honey? Lane honey doesn't tell you any of that. They don't tell you what you're getting reported on. They don't tell you where the information is coming from. It's worthless. Did I say that? Maybe. So we see that. We've got 62 reports from 14 companies, 94 cents a mile to $1.09. That is your range. The average being 99 cents based on however many the 62 reports are there. Then we can look at the loads down here. And let's see if I can find that same load that's over here. Palmetto to Forest Park. It's posted 3 minutes ago, so it shouldn't be too far on the right side, on the left side of the screen, rather. And I bet if I refreshed it, it wouldn't be there anymore. I had it highlighted. So over here is exact matches, Orlando to Chattanooga. This top section, Jacksonville to Smyrna, Georgia. I think that was the first one that I had clicked on the other screen. And I don't even see what I had highlighted over here. So there's the Jacksonville to Smyrna, Georgia, exact match. And you see this one's crossed out, so it's no longer there. And I don't even know if the lower level versions, the lower paid versions cross it out like this or just remove it. But Orlando to Montgomery is, let's see, Port Wentworth to Coleman, because I'll use that one because it has a rate, and I want to start talking about rate view. Port Wentworth to Coleman, which is over here. It's not an exact match. You can see Deadhead is further out. So, broker to carrier spot for the past 15 days. There's been 117 reports with 21 companies, $797 per trip. Birmingham market for the past 15 days, a 314. Remember I said it's the 3-digit zip code market. So the 314 market for the past 15 days, 447 miles for this particular trip, Port Wentworth to Coleman, Alabama. $1.78 is the 15-day average. $1.66 to $2.08 is the range. This includes a fuel surcharge. Now, this is broker to carrier spot market. This does not give me shipper to carrier until I click down here. Shipper to carrier contract market, $2.05 a mile. So $2.05 a mile, $9.18 a trip. Broker to carrier spot, $9.79. Here's where we're going to start getting into some discrepancies with some other products out there. So it's $797 is what a broker is paying the carriers on average. $797 on this particular lane. $918. So a broker is making a little over $100, $120. Yeah, about $121 on this load. On $918, they're paying the truck this $800. They're making $100. They're making roughly average 10% or so. Let's pull up a calculator and see what that is. So $797. Let's see. Times divided by the 918. Sorry, I'm struggling here. 86%. So they're making about 14, almost 15% profit on that load. That's about average for a broker. They're making about 15. The average on this, a broker on average makes about 15% profit, between 14, just under 15% on average for what we're seeing right here. That's pretty typical. Most brokers make between 10 and 20% on a load. 15% is pretty decent. And that's fair for everybody, in my opinion. Let's see what we got here. I believe, this is a feature that I have, just to talk about the higher level version here. Somebody give me a thumbs up if the audio is still good. Anything you can say to let me know that we're still live and we're good here. Uh-oh. Maybe we're not. I'm not seeing anything. Talking to myself, maybe. Let's find out. Oh, we're good. Okay, we got some thumbs up. Takes a minute, I guess. All right. Audio good. Sounds good. All right. Thank you. All right. Those of you that are watching, go ahead and share this out if you can. I had some callers, and the callers dropped. So if anybody wants to call, phone lines are open, 917-889-9924. I will check your lanes for you. I will check anything you want to see. I'll show you how the broker stuff works. I'll show you what I see as a broker if I'm setting up your company. I can show you all kinds of stuff on my end of this if you want to see it. So one of the features I have, because I have an enterprise version, everybody in our fleet can be looking at this at the same time. And remember, I have another tab open. I have this set up. I have my version, which is I'm set up as Kenneth Long on there. And then Elizabeth Long, my wife, has hers set up. So she's doing the same search, and she has this particular load open, Port Wentworth, Georgia to Cullman, Alabama. So when I go back to my search, it shows this little yellow tab that, yeah, she's working on that one too. And this little blue thing here, I can leave comments on the load. Something interesting that you should know, when I'm looking for trucks or I'm looking for loads or anything on my version, and bigger brokers have this. I'm not a huge broker, but I'm probably one of the smaller brokers that dips into this feature. I can leave feedback. So if you're talking to you call a broker that has this load working for XYZ brokerage, and you talk to them, you could call them back an hour later. You could call another agent that works for XYZ brokerage, and they can leave notes. You can say, I called and talked to someone and no go. And that is internal. So it shows that I called, talked to someone and no go. When I'm searching this and I go back to it, that note shows up. I don't know that it shows up on this other version though, but it does show up on this enterprise version. And every broker can see each other's notes, which is kind of cool. It's cool for us, even as a carrier, because if, let's say I have a driver that's searching on the load board and he's calling on loads and I'm calling on the same stuff, I can leave notes so that when he's out in the truck, he could look at that and see, oh, Kenny's at the office. He already called on that one, and this is what they talked about. So that's kind of neat. But remember, brokers are taking notes on you when you talk to them. So now that's a feature that most other small carriers aren't going to have. You're not going to see that displayed in a lot of other places. It's kind of cool for the small carriers to be able to do that. Big carriers can definitely leverage that if they're leaving a lot of notes. And it's also tied into their in-house systems, their TMS systems, and a broker can pull up the information on you in their TMS system and see everything that you've done for them in the past. They can see your average rate per mile, the lanes you like to run, and then they combine that with the notes that they're taking here, and then start to develop a pretty good profile of you as a carrier over time. So just keep that in mind when you're negotiating. And if you get on there and you cuss a broker out, you can be sure that they're going to leave notes there for that. And the next guy is going to know, even if you talk to someone else, they'll know that, hey, this guy was less than cooperative, so we won't work with them. All right. Now let's look at rate view, and then I want to compare that to Lane Honey. And I keep getting alerts that pop up on my screen, and I'm getting comments, but it's comments of various different things. So give me a minute. Let me narrow it all down. All right. 740, we haven't even gotten to it yet. Rateview. This is a completely standalone product, separate from the load board itself. The load board, all the different places it has rates, pulls that information from this main product. This is the main database that it pulls it from. But this is the interface to where we can pull a lot more information. Right off the bat, I've already done this Orlando to Atlanta search because I was kind of preparing for doing this live. So, Orlando to Atlanta. This is what we see. $455 broker to carrier spot. Let's go back to the load board version. Search loads. My search is already live. Orlando to Chattanooga. Let's change it in our rate view. Orlando to Chattanooga. $557. $557. You see, that's the same information that we're seeing on the rate view and on the load board. Rate view. So what's interesting is we can also see shipper to carrier contract rates. So this is broker to carrier spot rates and shipper to carrier to compare it. So what we're looking at here, $557 from Orlando to Chattanooga, $664 shipper to carrier. Now, shipper to carrier is the same number as shipper to broker. They really don't separate that out. So as a shipper, you might be able to make about $100 more going direct. A broker makes about $100. It's about 20% on a $500 load. So they're making about 20% on that one. Now that's the average. And if you highlight this here, and let's see if I can try to zoom this in so you all can see it a little better. So we're seeing the average and we're seeing the spread. So $613 is the high end, $529 is the low end. That is your broker to carrier spot. Shipper to carrier, $765 is the high end, $439 is the low end. So what that means is there are shippers paying carriers $439. There are shippers paying brokers $439. Contracted rate, $439 from Orlando to Chattanooga. But the average rate paid to a broker to carrier spot market is $557. So there are absolutely brokers and carriers that are locked into contracts that are lower than the average spot market rate right now. They are lower. They actually lose money or break even just to move the load. Are there brokers out there that are locked into $765 and are moving their loads on the low end of $529? Possibly. It's possible. It's not common. I can tell you it's not common. So let's look at this product right here, Lane Honey. For those of you that are watching now, in the comments below, go ahead and tag the time on this video. I'm doing it live right now, so you can't do it. But when you're watching the replay, tag the time so that people can fast forward to this, because I talked a lot about nothing for a minute. Tag this time of this video and say, comparing Rateview to Lane Honey. It'll start now. Yeah, Star Car Dave, do that. I missed 45 minutes. We just got to Lane Honey. Yes, because you weren't here. I was waiting for you to join us. But tag it, and right now we're going to start talking about this. Looks like we're actually an hour and 2 minutes in. Not 45 minutes, Dave. You're an hour and 2 minutes late. So where have you been? So here we are at Lane Honey. Here's Rateview. We move these around so it's a little easier. Somebody give me a lane, any lane that you would like to hear about. Any lane you would like me to look up. And I'm going to show you why there's some huge discrepancies in Lane Honey. I can promise you, just to show you the one that we've been working on. Orlando, Florida to Chattanooga, Tennessee. Now, remember what we saw. The average, $557, is broker to carrier. That's what the brokers are paying the carriers. Shipper contract average is $664. So $664. We can see that same thing over here on the load board. $557, shipper to carrier, $664. $1.18 a mile is what the shippers are paying the brokers and carriers. This is the contracted rates. Shippers don't necessarily differentiate between a broker and a carrier, by the way. They don't care that it's a broker. They don't care that it's a carrier. They just pay their contracted rate. Most brokers actually represent themselves as carriers. They go in the door and they say, hey, can you sign me up as a carrier for you? Shippers don't know the difference. So $664 is the contracted, that's a direct shipper price. If you work directly for a shipper, that's your average. We talked about that. Now, this is a 30-day average on this one. Reason being, because they don't have enough information. They've got to have at least 3 data points to be able to average that out. They don't have at least 3. They have to go back 30 days to get at least 3. But if they go back 30 days, they get 117 reports from seven companies. And they go back 15 days, they can get 62 reports, broker to carrier, from 14 companies. Why is there a discrepancy? Well, part of it is something I mentioned a little while ago. If you have a 7-day billing cycle, you know, if a broker sends out all their invoices every Friday, a 7-day period isn't going to give them enough. If it's a 7-day period, it's at least 15 days before they even have the first week. And to have more than that, they got to go at least 2 weeks. So 15-day period is really the minimum to get a good data set, in my opinion. But we look at that again, $664. What does Lane Honey say about that? Let's take a look. And before that comes up, let's talk about one thing. Where does this data come from? This data is contributed directly from the shippers, brokers, and carriers directly. They contribute directly. And there's really no room for them to manipulate these numbers because they're shared directly out of the systems they use for billing. So, in other words, if I have a load that I move as a carrier for $2 a mile and I invoice the broker for that, I submit that to DAT, they see that load moved for $2 a mile. And that's one of their points of data. The broker then has to invoice me or send the money to me, a rate confirmation that's going to represent $2 a mile. If those don't match up, then there'll be some variation in the data, and it wouldn't matter. I'm not going to send a $2 invoice, $2 a mile invoice, unless I had a rate confirmation that matched it. You understand? So there's not a lot of room for manipulation. I'm not going to go in as a broker and change all my invoices before I hit the send button to contribute, because then it's going to screw up all my books. That's my invoicing and my accounting and everything. It would screw everything up. I really can't go through and try to manipulate the numbers like that. I could, I suppose, if I wanted to spend a lot of time going back and forth, changing everything back and forth. But to think that they're going to manipulate those numbers is pretty difficult. They're usually linked API, so it's automatic. When I create an invoice, it's sent to DAT. They know. So, and it might be a daily sync or what have you, but it's just not going to be something that they can manipulate. They're actually pulling the actual rate confirmation, actual invoice data directly from the shippers, carriers, and brokers. They've got hundreds of TMS systems they use. They've got almost 1,000 brokers, over 1,000 brokers and carriers that they're pulling data from, and they're doing it on 65 billion with a B freight invoices every year. 65. So they've got a pretty decent sample set, and there's not a lot of ways to manipulate those numbers. But we know where they get their data. We know that their data is relatively accurate. They throw out the anomalies. So let's say there's 10 loads that move at $2 a mile, but then there's one load on that same lane that moves for $5 a mile. That's an anomaly. There's something wrong with that one. Maybe it was a recovered load, or maybe it was, something unique about that particular load. They throw that one out, and they just focus on the averages. So it's the average of the mean, I guess you would say. So they take the mean, throw out the top and bottom 25%, and they average that, and that's where we get our numbers. But we know they're relatively accurate because they come from actual invoice data. I have been asked to be a contributor, so they're getting this from real companies. Let's look at Lane Honey. Orlando to Florida. Shippers pay $15.46 a mile is what they're saying. $2.76 a mile out of Florida. Orlando to Chattanooga, out of Florida. $1,546. We know that the broker to carrier average, so as a carrier, if you're a driver, this somewhere in this neighborhood, $550, $600, something like that, is about what you could be expected to get on this lane. Yes, you want to try to do better, but we're looking at averages. So $1 a mile is roughly what you're going to get on this lane out of Florida. We know that Florida freight is cheap. It's always cheap. Lane Honey says it. Shippers are paying the brokers and carriers $2.76 a mile. Now, they say that they're paying it just to brokers, and the carriers should be going in and trying to get that rate. Carriers earn $6.38, $1.14 rate per mile. Shipper to carrier contract, $6.64. I don't know where they're getting these numbers. Shippers are not paying 3 times more than it would take to get a truck. If they can get a truck for $500 or $600, they're not paying 3 times that. They're just not. And why are they not? Ontario to Honolulu. We actually moved a load from Ontario to Honolulu not too long ago, Richard. We've actually done that. So I know you're trying to be funny, but we've actually done a load like that. Ontario to Honolulu. It's not that difficult because Honolulu is still in the States. You got to put it on a container. You got to put it on a boat, but it's doable. And we've flown stuff to Mexico as well. So brokers are doing that kind of work. But it's not even, there's no customs issues, there's nothing to move something from the States to Honolulu. Obviously from Ontario, this was from the States to Honolulu, but bring it to the States, import it here, and then send it on the boat. But going back to this, shippers are not paying 3 times what it takes. Why are shippers not paying 3 times what it takes? Anybody? Bueller? I'm waiting. This is a real question. Let me know what you think. Why are shippers not paying 3 times what it takes a broker to pay a truck? On this other thread, people were cussing out about how horrible brokers are, and Lane Honey, this product, is talking about how horrible brokers are. And let's look at some of these loads here. Lakeland, Florida to Louisville, Kentucky, $281 a mile. Lakeland to Louisville for $281 a mile. That's not happening. I can promise you that's not happening. Almost $3 a mile. They're not paying $3,000 to go to Louisville. Lakeland to Louisville. Orlando to Phoenix, $222. Maybe if that's some kind of specialty load. Frostproof to Concord, $310 a mile. That's not happening. Not happening. Somebody tell me why you don't think that's happening. Because of the capacity? Because of loose capacity? So shippers are not paying brokers that much. Shippers are not paying brokers that much. And we're going to look at some of these other lanes. But shippers are not paying brokers that much. Supply and demand? Exactly, supply and demand. I promise you that there may be the occasional load that they're making that. Too many trucks in there, they don't have to pay that much. Exactly. Brokers are paying maybe $500 or $600 to move that lane. $638, maybe they're paying as much as $700 to move that lane. Brokers are not making this broker spread of 59% profit. They are not making 60% profits, 59%, 50. They're not making 50%. They're not making 40%. They're not making 30%. That's insane to think that they are. Anybody that thinks that a broker is making that much profit is And yeah, but Sammy at Making Sense says it does though. And Sammy, I'm gonna call him actually and discuss this with him because he doesn't have RateView. But he was using this and comparing it, which is what I watched his video and I saw this. And you guys share this to him. Tell him to come watch this video. But lose capacity. So I'll tell you a quick story. Elizabeth and I, we run the carrier, we run the brokerage, and in doing so, one of our customers has us warehousing stuff. So we warehouse stuff here in Florida. We're also running the UDrive company, which is a consulting company. And then my father-in-law runs water filtration, air quality company. So with all of those companies going on, our phones ring off the hook with brokers and carriers rather, trying to get our business. We get LTL companies trying to see if we have anything to move. We have other brokers calling to see if we have anything to move. We have all kind of stuff because they know we're warehousing stuff. They know we're moving stuff. They know even if it's just trying to get other some of our brokered stuff to co-broker it. He's here. Sammy's here. So, Sammy, this is, I was watching your video. I was going to call you before I did this, but I got antsy and I went live first. So what I was saying, there's no way that a broker is going to be, a shipper is going to be paying almost 3 times what it takes to move a load. They're not making these 59% profit margins, that spread, because their shippers' phones are blowing up. Shippers' phones are absolutely blowing up. Now, we went over to the RateView, and we did the math. They're making maybe 20% on this relatively low-paying load, but they're making maybe 20%, and we showed that some of them might even be losing money. We go to RateView here. Shipper to carrier, $664. They could potentially have to be paying $613. If they're on the low side of this, $439. If they're contracted to move a load at $439 and they have to pay the high end of this market of $613, they could potentially lose money on some of these. Even if they're right in the middle at the averages, $664, and they're paying $557, if they're making $100 a load, okay, they're making maybe 20% on a load, right? Not even. To think that they're making 60% on a load is just, I can't believe anybody would believe that at all. Because I'm a broker. Dave knows, he was here in the office. We did sales training about a year ago. And we had some sales guys here that went out. Had 2 guys working for us full time. And they sat here and they just made sales calls. Dave made some sales calls. They just sat here making sales calls. Calling everybody here locally in town. And for about a year, I had 2 people. They were making several sales calls. Brokers, by and large, if you talk to the big guys, the Coyotes, the Cavalries, TQL, Echo, you name it, C.H. Robinson, whatever, they literally have rooms full of hundreds of people with headsets like this on, and then with those headsets, all they do is make phone calls. The average phone call, cold call to a shipper, most sales agents are making 40, 50 brand new cold calls every single day. That was here at Patriot Star, that was our goal for each of those guys to make 40 or 50 new, fresh cold call sales calls every single day. And then follow up with those cold calls the next day. Every single day, they're making 100 plus calls between cold calls and follow-up calls. So, if you were a shipper and you're moving thousands of loads, and you get a call from any broker, big, small, doesn't matter. But if you get a call from one of those big guys that you know can handle it, and they say, I see that the average out of your area is $1,500, almost $1,600. You're paying $2.76 a mile to move those loads out of that area. Mr. Shipper that's moving thousands of loads, I could cut you a deal. I could do it for $700. I could save shipping costs for you by 50%. What is that, Mr. Shipper? You move 1,000 loads and you're losing about $700 on each one of those? Mr. Shipper, If you sign on this dotted line, I can save you $700,000 today. How many shippers and brokers are, or how many brokers are making 60% margins when that's happening? How many brokers are making 60% margins? I know shippers that have changed their phone number. My father-in-law had to do this. My father-in-law had to change his phone number because you had all the LTL companies for what he does. You had the RNLs, the Estes, even UPS and FedEx are calling, blowing up their phone on a regular basis, 2, 3, 4 times a week. Some of them are the same guy calling 2, 3, 4 times a week. Some of them are different people calling 2, 3, 4 times a week. Shippers have had to change their phone number because there's so many brokers out there right now pounding the phones trying to get new freight, knocking on doors, literally going in person. Sales trainer and my 2 guys went around town in person, went to local places here, spent a whole day just going out, knocking on doors in person to make sales calls. If somebody came in your door and says, this is what you're paying, this is what you'll have to pay, and I could save you 50% on your shipping costs, and that could equate to thousands of dollars, who would not take that deal? I agree. Lane honey does not make sense. Sorry, Sammy, I didn't mean to say that, but that just does not work. It doesn't. Let's look at a couple other ones. Do you answer some questions here? Do you have to have power to get RateView? No, you do not have to have power to get RateView. And RateView is a standalone product. Starts at $200 a month. Starts at $200 a month and goes up from there. If you look, and let me go to my version here. If you look here, I actually, zoom back out so I can see what I'm doing. I actually don't even have the highest level. I would have to upgrade to see some of these other features. 15 days to me is pretty good average. 30 days, maybe. 7 days to me, I don't necessarily want to pay more to get 7 days. 7 days to me is so tight that I think it becomes diluted. So 7-day averages don't necessarily work. 30, 60, maybe. But I think 15 days is where it's at. So I don't even have the highest version. I'm paying about $200 per seat for this. I do think it's worth it, especially if you're a broker. If you're running a small fleet, it's probably worth it as well, especially if you're bidding on direct freight. If you're a one-truck carrier and you're going to start making calls to get direct freight, I think this is a good tool to have. You don't necessarily have to sign a year contract with it, but even if you get this for just a few months while you're making your sales calls and to research it a little bit, I think this is absolutely a good tool to have if you're in the sales part of your business and you're going to be making that move, that strategic move. Good to see you. I signed on with Landstar in July. I'm pretty happy so far. Are you going to be at MATS this year? I'm signed up for MATS. I've got an Airbnb reserved. May fly in there and spend a day there. I don't know if I'll be there for all 3 days yet. And it's a coin toss right now because we do have, we've got some stuff. One of our direct customers asked us to personally handle some of the freight that we've got moving. A couple of unique things they've got going on. I'm able to help with some setup and tear down stuff. So they asked me to personally handle some stuff in March. I don't know if the timing is going to overlap. We may be able to just fly up there for a day. We'll see. Do you have to have power to get RateView? How much is it? We just went over that. Atlanta to Miami. So basically, we're going to reverse this same one. So if we just click right here, I guess we'll be specific. Atlanta to Miami, Florida. And now I'm assuming you went for van, right? You didn't ask specifically for anything, so we'll just look at van rates. So van, 664 miles from the 330 zip codes, downtown Atlanta area to the downtown 331 Miami area. You can see the trend over the past This is this month, and this is the previous 12, so we have a 13-month system here. Down this month. It's always down in January. I'm sure if we could go back to December of 2017, we'd see that it kind of came down probably here. Well, that was an anomaly year, so we'll see. But it was on a downward trend. So January is typically down. Our average rate, broker to carrier, is $1,563. Broker to carrier, $1,563. This feature right here, if I paid for the higher level and I'm contributing, they'll actually take all of my own data, which is interesting to know. They'll take my data from our rate confirmations and so forth, and they'll plug them into this so that I can have my own graph here to compare how our fleet is actually doing in comparison to the rest of them. I don't have that feature. I don't necessarily think that I want that feature to compare this, but that's something that some of the mega fleets do have. With the 11, to 11 trucks or whatever that we end up having running, having the averages would really not be enough data points to average that out anyhow. But if I had 28,000 trucks like Knight Swift, then my data would probably be interesting to see on here. Shipper to carrier, 1928. So there's about a $400 or $350 spread. But remember, there is a spread here, $14.96 to $16. So about $1,500 to $1,600 is what the carriers are getting from brokers, and shippers are getting upwards of $2,500 all the way as low as $1,669, so $1,700, average of $19.28. So a broker could potentially be making about $300 on average, $350 on this lane, which on $1,500, that's about, they're in the neighborhood of 15 to 20%. And that's Rateview. Let's look at the same thing on Lane Honey. And Sammy, if you're still in here, do you have a lane that you would like me to look up to kind of compare with your video what you were doing? Shippers pay $19.05, $283 per mile, which that's pretty close. $19.28. So that one is actually relatively close to that. And the carriers are $14.13. So this one appears to be, whoops, I'm on the wrong version here, wrong level, wrong window. Let's see. This one, $19.28. $19.05, and broker to carrier $15.63. Carriers earn $14.13. So they're actually not too far off on this particular lane, which is interesting. What I found interesting about this is, I don't know if it's because they don't have enough data on certain lanes, or if they're trying to manipulate, because I don't know where Lane Honey is getting their information. If I knew where they were getting their information, I could narrow it down some more. Yeah, Igor says, where do they... So, yeah, and Sammy says, we need to find out how they're getting their numbers. I've asked them, and they are not very clear. They said they get them from invoicing companies and so forth. I don't know what that means. And I was actually messaging with somebody today on that. The founder of it, I don't know if she has a lot of people working for her or whatever. The founder of it we've talked before, and I said there was an issue that I found. And I'm not trying to trash this. We're just comparing the two products. I would love to know where they get their information. I'm seeing 30, 50, 60% spreads, and I just don't, even at 30%, I don't see that as being realistic. We're seeing companies like C.H. Robinson, they were making huge money in 2018. 2019, their profits dropped. No, they didn't lose money, okay? They didn't lose. They weren't going in the red, but their profits dropped by 48%. So what they were earning above and beyond their expenses was about half of what it was the previous year. Now, 2018 was a record year for everybody. 2019, they lost half of their profit margin, which is probably true now. That's why we're seeing a lot of carriers that have been around for a long time close their doors right now, because in 2018, in order to put trucks on the road, in order to hire drivers, it became competitive even at that level, and everybody spent a lot of money. Rates went up. Driver pay went up. But other expenses went up as well. Insurance costs went up. Trucks went up. A lot of people went out and traded their paid-for equipment and bought new equipment. And then the bottom fell out of the market 2019. So a lot of these fleets that have been around for decades are closing their doors because the cost got out of control. But in order to be competitive in 2018, they had to do some of those things. Even us here at Patriot Star, we made a lot of huge investments in 2018. We bought a lot of trailers. We bought some trucks. We made some investments in software. Like I'm showing some of the stuff I'm showing you now. But I have server systems here in the office. We've got a lot of money invested in different systems that we're trying to use to make things more efficient. And now we're in a system where we're trying to cut costs. We're trying to back some of that down, things that we don't need. And we tried some stuff out, but fortunately, we didn't go into debt trying it out like a lot of companies did. Let me scroll back up to some of these comments, and let me verify if we've got any phone calls. Got a couple people on the phone. Again, 917-889-9924. Call the number. You can listen, and I'd love to hear some comments if anybody's got anything to say about this. And let me get into some of the comments here on YouTube. Chicago to St. Louis. I'll come back and I'll just go down the different lanes here in a minute. Let me see what other comments we've got. Sammy said, I'm not sure about it. What got me was, and you said that, Sammy, you said you weren't sure about it. What got me was all the comments afterwards about how horrible brokers are and they're taking advantage of everybody, and they're, the carriers are getting, raked over the coals, and some of them use some more foul language than that. But the information that you put out, Sammy, was fine. But I think the comments, and social media has a way of doing that, just dragged it out of control, which is why I wanted to do this comparison, because to be able to see a little more information, like the backside of Rateview and where some of this other stuff is coming from, is good. But where do they get their stats? Lane Honey. And I had asked her that earlier today, and she said, well, they're getting it from invoicing companies and so forth. It just doesn't make sense. We need to find out how they're getting the numbers. I've seen 30%, but never 50 plus. You need to not look at Lane Honey. It's trash. I would like to see somebody like Lane Honey make an impact and make a difference, but I don't know if there's ulterior motives there, if they're trying to manipulate the numbers to try to, I don't know if maybe they've got ties to a brokerage or a carrier and they're trying to do something, but those numbers are not reliable or usable. If I called, like I said, there are brokers just blowing up shippers' phones. If I got on and I said, that lane from Orlando to Chattanooga, it's going to be $1,500, they'd hang up on me. I mean, they'd be laughing as they hang up on me. I don't know how they're getting that kind of stuff. Maybe if it was like a radioactive load or something, right? But I can't imagine just general freight moving like that. If we knew a little more detail. And I don't know how big their sample set either is. Maybe it is a radioactive load and they've only got one load to share. Or maybe they've got 2 loads a week or something like that because their sample set isn't good. I know DAT, they run $65 billion a year through their system, and they're pulling it from thousands of carriers. And as I showed you, It even shows you how many reports they're pulling it from. So Orlando to Chattanooga, 117 reports from 7 companies. And this is the past 30 days. I wanted to pull up the Orlando to Atlanta. Or Atlanta to Miami. This is another cool little feature that we have here. If you wanted to plug in your accessorials and so forth, you could plug that in if you're trying to use this to bid on a lane. Another way that it could kind of be useful possibly to carriers. So this one, Atlanta to Miami, 66 reports from 19 companies. So that's a pretty decent set. We don't know if Lane Honey has 1 report, 10 reports, 100 reports. We have no idea. But this one has 66 reports from 19 companies. DAT doesn't make their stuff a secret. So it's potentially possible that maybe Lane Honey even worked some of this information into it. That I don't know. Where do they get their stats? DAT comes out of select carriers and brokers TMS system. I wouldn't say it's select. There are thousands of them. There are thousands. All the big ones do. All of the big ones do. And the big ones actually, have a pretty big pool of freight to pull from. And the rates are all over the board. So I think the big ones are a good marker. But they also have the smaller ones. They've asked us to be a contributor. The only reason I'm not contributing currently is because our TMS system it's literally based on a server here in my office, and I don't have a way to sync it up. But we're talking with DAT about ways to do that. I do send my information. I can post my trucks and everything through my TMS. I might show you guys that sometime in the future because there's a lot of when a load gets posted and you see different offer rates and different things like that. I want to show you how brokers post loads and how brokers post a load, from their TMS and syncs up to it. I also can pull it the other way, and different TMS systems do the same. So DAT, it comes out of select carriers, but I think it's a big enough sample set that it's a reasonably good and accurate number to work with. Could you pull up the Flatbed nationwide hot markets? Yeah, sure. That's an easy one. Hot market map. Flatbeds, market area. There's your flatbed market area. Let me try to make that bigger for you guys. You know what? It just occurred to me that I have a green screen thing going on, and that probably shows up as weird to you guys. I don't know. If it does, I apologize, but you can kind of make it out here. The dark colors down here are the screen is green. Like there's a green screen behind me, and then the hot market map is green maps. So it's probably just showing as green. So if that's the case, I apologize. But this area right down here is the best for flatbed, as well as up in this region here. So if we look at the previous day, Jackson, Mississippi market, 161 loads to 1 truck. 5,806 loads posted, 36 trucks posted. So that's a pretty good market to be in right now. A lot of that's the steel. So that's probably the best market to be in if you're in a flatbed right now, right in that region. Right in the if you're in Alabama, Mississippi region, that's the best place. And then Montana. Now, here's something interesting. Montana, we'll look at that. It's 61 loads, but that covers that entire area of Montana, and Montana's a pretty big state. That could all potentially be coming out of one city. So there's 990 loads posted, only 16 trucks. But if 16 trucks posted in the whole eastern side of Montana, it's a pretty big area to cover, and those 900 loads could potentially be coming out of one spot. So you got to really pay a little more attention than that. Western Montana the same way. I'd imagine Western Montana is probably coming out of the far western edge of Montana. So DAT Power isn't good enough to see those rates. DAT Power is good enough. So the RateView product will show you this information. It'll show you this month and the previous 12 months. That's why this is really geared toward the broker side, because you can see trends over the past year. So this what's currently happening right now, which is right here, and then you can see the previous year. So you can see what the trends are, which is helpful if you're bidding a contract, whether you're a broker or a carrier. If you're bidding on a contract lane, to see, well, in, like, for example, this one, May, it looks like it dips down, and then for some reason it pops up a little bit in June, and that should be year-over-year trends. And if you have this, literally do have this data from year over year, if you're compiling this, you can see what the trends are, because 2018, the maps look completely different. But this gives you some idea of what you should be looking for. We're going to be on a downward trend coming from December to January, which is very typical. This is last year through February, and it starts to level off. Now this is from Atlanta to Miami, starts to level off, because here we are in the spring. Rates right here in March, you're right between seasons. So again, February, you're going to have your flowers and things coming out for Valentine's Day. March, you're right between seasons. And this dips down again until May, June is when you got your watermelons and things moving. That's when things really start to run out of here. And this is Vans. So your hard produce in June is moving out of Florida. You could see these trends year over year. But let me edit this search. Orlando to Miami. And you see what the rates are today. So this is your average. I do have a little more specific rates. Again, I get down to very specific 3-digit zip code rates. If you don't have RateView, you're going to get regional rates. So it's your market, like half of Florida. I get Central Florida. So that kind of thing. I'm sorry, this is Orlando. I'm Chattanooga. Atlanta to Miami, right? That's what we were looking for. Atlanta. Whoops. Now I screwed up. ATLA. My computer's trying to pre-fill it for me. That's the problem. Atlanta, Georgia. There we go. To Miami, Florida. So you get this information, but you might not get as specific as I'm getting. So 1563, and if we went back to the rate view, 1563. It's the same information you get on the load board. But here, you're going to get, I get down to 3-digit zips, and you might only get market level if you don't have rate view attached. So for example, let's see, do I still have Trucker's Edge? Elizabeth, yeah, see, every account on my system has rate view, so I wouldn't be able to demonstrate that for you right now. I could go in, I've got admin privileges, I could go in and remove the rate view from one of the accounts or something and demonstrate it. Maybe I'll do that another time, but you don't need to see all that. So, but you see this information, you see the miles in 15 days, you see how many reports there are. I don't think, if you don't have rate view, I don't think it shows you how many reports are pulling from. Let's see. Compress margins to keep traffic. We dig into it real good. We can find it. Something doesn't make sense. I did run rates for Chattanooga to Chicago, then reversed it. Okay, let me take a look. We'll do the same thing. Chattanooga to Chicago. And I'm assuming van, because Sammy, you pull a van. So 839, let's do the same thing on, uh-oh. Lost lane, honey. back over here. Lane Honey and back it out of here. Chattanooga. Don't you have to pre-fill it? It's not pre-filling it. That's not going to work. Let's try it again. I probably have to log back in. Probably didn't spend enough time on it. Let's see what I can do. There we go. There we go. It has to... If it doesn't pre-fill it for you, it doesn't work. Come on. See, now I can't even get it to work. It might be my fault, though. I don't know. So we might have to give up on Lane Honey this time. All right. But looking at the rate view, Chattanooga to Illinois, we see it's 8:39 going north.
90 seconds.
We just hit these buttons to flip it, and it's 12:78 going south. I'd like to see what they think on that.
Seconds.
I don't know why I can't get this to pre-fill. Oh, well. So, can't do it. Yeah, green screen is all black. I knew that. Sorry about that. All right. Getting ready to leave a drop and hook route to run the load boards. What should I expect for detention time? Well, it depends on what you're doing. If you're going to be pulling a reefer, expect a lot of detention time. Do you mean how much detention time, or do you mean, I'm assuming you're going from drop and hook to pulling a trailer that's live load, unload.
10
I mean, you include 2 hours on either end. So expect to sit for 2 hours. Oh, yeah, they may have banned me. But expect to run for 2 hours and set. Our vans overall, we don't get a whole lot of detention time. It's not a huge problem. The reefers definitely get a lot more detention time. Flatbeds, it's almost non-existent for detention time. Of course, you don't do a lot of drop and hook with flatbed. So if you're going to be doing van, expect detention. Occasionally, if you're going to be doing reefer, expect detention as part of the rate. Make sure you are very specific on negotiating that. Symbiotic relationship, tossing out the top and bottom. Okay, so Dave was talking about throwing out the outliers. So if you are, hold on, let me make sure we're good over here. They take the $65 billion a year, and again, they throw out the outliers by taking the top 25% and the bottom 25% and just throwing that out. So basically, it's an average of the mean. It's not an average of everything. They throw out most of the stuff. They take kind of a range and they average that. Because if you, I kind of gave the example a little while ago. You have 10 loads that move at $2 a mile, and then number 11 moves at $5 a mile. Obviously, if it's an average of $2 a mile, 10 out of 10 times, 1 out of 11 times, it's $5 a mile. That's going to throw your average off. It's going to show, $2.10 a mile or $2.20 a mile or something like that. And that's not accurate. If you throw that one out, it's $2 a mile. That's what you should expect to get. So they throw the outliers out. So by throwing the outliers out, you get a little bit better picture of what it's doing. And the way they do that is, they average the mean. So mean being kind of the center range. So they take the bottom 25% and the top 25%. So the very worst of the worst, the cheapest stuff out there, they throw that out. Because some of that might be guys running for fuel money or whatever. Then they throw out the outliers of the high end. So somebody puts in, it's a general freight van, but actually it's radioactive soup that somebody's hauling. They're getting $20 a mile for it. We'll throw that out because that doesn't really apply to general freight. So it's really the average of the middle stuff. So the average range, and that gives you a bit better picture. Sammy and I were able to talk with them at the DAT last year, and their systems are really, really good. I was actually really impressed. I went in there a little skeptical, and once I started talking to them about how they come up with the data and so forth, I had some questions about that. I was actually pretty impressed. I'm nothing's going to be perfect, and they'll tell you that too. There's no way to be perfect, but it does give you a pretty good snapshot picture. Trying to get some info on detention time to expect. Ben on a drop and hook account. Again, it's if you're pulling van, it'll be occasionally. Dave can tell you with what he does, the pad wrap type stuff, you kind of include 4 hours to load and unload. That stuff takes a lot longer. If you're doing general freight, you try to include 2 hours. And notice I'm saying include 2 hours. That's included in the rate. And so it's important to understand that when you are bidding on and working with a broker, you say, look, I will do this with including 2 hours to load, 2 hours to unload for this rate. If you need me for more than 2 hours to load or unload, you need to pay this much more. Lane Honey won't work on my end either. It's possible she did ban us. I don't know. Check van from Three Forks, Montana to Jackson, Alabama. Okay. Van, Three Forks, Montana to, you said Jackson, Alabama? $32.28. Broker to carrier spot market. Current today, $32.28. That's 43 loads from 15 different companies, averaged out to $32.28. The low end of that was $28.77, so roughly $2,900. The high end was roughly $3,900. So there's almost a $1,000 spread there. Average out to be about $3,300 roughly. So that's your broker to carrier spot. Shipper to carrier contract, $3,200. That's kind of interesting. So you're almost equivalent. Actually, the broker to carrier, brokers have to pay carriers more than currently. The spot market is higher than contract rates out of there right now. I know Dave was up in Montana not too long ago, and he was talking about how Montana is a hot market. Brokers are paying more. They could potentially be losing money out of Montana right now. They're paying more than the average, and that reflects it right here. Let me see if I can zoom this in so you all can see it a little better. This right here. So the blue graph is what the shippers pay. That's the contract rates. And the orange graph is the spot market rates. The orange is actually higher. Spot market rates, the high end of the spot market is $3,900. The high end of contract is only about 3,650, 3,700. So brokers potentially could be losing money out of Montana right now. That's what happens certain times of the year out of Florida, for example. In a couple of months, brokers will be losing money on their stuff out of Florida because it does pay about $1.50 a mile, and they'll be moving it for $2, $3 a mile. But that only happens for a short period of time. How did your gross income for flatbed compare to your gross income for dry van on your trucks for 2019? Flatbeds dipped down from 2018 a bit. They were still better overall than our general freight vans, but our specialized vans did better than our general freight flatbeds. We had some Conestogas last year. For most of the year, we had 5 Conestogas at one point. And toward the end of the year, we now have mostly flatbeds, one Conestoga still. But the Conestogas always have kind of premium rates. It's a bit specialized for flatbed. So it's hard for me to really compare the two. Our specialized vans did better than our specialized vans. Dave did better than our average flatbeds. Even currently right now, Dave's numbers are coming in about comparable or maybe a little higher than our general freight flatbeds. Our best paying flatbed is pretty much where Dave's at. But flatbed, by and large, overall is higher. This time of year, flatbed is really slow. Flatbed, it picks up in the spring, when you start seeing landscaping supplies and building supplies and equipment, construction supplies moving. Flatbed will pick back up. This time of year, flatbed, this is the dead season for flatbed. It's a dead season for everybody, but especially for flatbed. So, makes sense. Sammy says, no way. I've looked at it for about 2 years now and never been sure about it. DAT's the only load stuff I get behind and back 100%. I'm surprised after seeing it all in the behind-the-scenes stuff. I don't know. I spent more time talking to the guys there about that specifically. So, but I was pretty impressed with the way they do it. Of course, I brought up things like, well, I'm not a contributor. My numbers don't get worked in there. And they showed me how many they do have. And they showed there's a lot of fleets that are roughly my size and not much bigger. Any of the TMS platforms that are cloud-based are synced to that. So you do have some of the 1-2 truck carriers that are contributing. But all of the big ones contribute. There is a lot of information there. I find that obviously, Lane Honey, we just showed, I think overall their numbers are astronomically higher than average. If I went in there to make a sales call and I used their numbers, they'd slam the door in my face. I think DAT seems to be a little bit more on par with reality because they are pulling real numbers. But I also see that DAT tends to be a little on the high end there as well in a lot of places. Especially when the market is on a downward trend, DAT seems to be a little bit higher than what we're able to really negotiate for. When it's on an upward trend, of course, when you bring it up right now, and we're on a downward trend with rates, you bring it up, oh, well, the 15-day average is this, and the brokers say, no, it's not, can't be. But when it's on an upward trend and you start talking about it, they'll throw it in your face, well, we see the averages are this or whatever. But it is helpful, and I don't know, Sammy, can you see this information? You don't have rate view, so can you see how many reports that you're getting? So for Atlanta to Miami, I'm seeing 66 reports from 19 companies. I don't know if you can see that specific information on the lower versions without having rate view. But I think that's important to have because I can go to when I'm negotiating with a broker, I can say, yeah, you've got this load from Atlanta to Miami. I see you're only paying $2 a mile, but the average the past 15 days has been $2.35 a mile. Well, they'll say, no, it's not. But if I also have the information to say, oh, no, over the past 15 days, I've had 66 loads go down there from 19 different companies. I can see there's 66 loads moved at this average rate. So don't tell me that it's not that, right? Because you have that much data. I think it's that's a good piece of information to back it up. Because if that said there was 2 reports, I probably wouldn't even tell them that was my average. So, So I guess I didn't do load for 3100. FreightWave sonar is too low. They also have an agenda. I don't know what kind of agenda you think they would have. I don't agree with that. Their numbers are different than DAT. They don't take the average of the mean. They get their numbers. Their numbers come from DAT. So it's the same numbers that you're getting there. Their numbers reflect a little lower because, one, they don't include the fuel surcharge, and two, they don't throw out the scraps. But I also talked to them. I went to visit FreightWaves in Chattanooga, and they are pretty fond of DAT. DAT contributes their numbers to FreightWaves. It's the same information. But you can pull the DAT number. Actually, that's one of the sonar tabs. You can pull a DAT average, and the DAT average from sonar is different than the DAT average on Rateview. And the reason is they have, they don't, okay. So if you don't have Rateview, you cannot see how many reports. So that's interesting. I think that's handy to have. So Dave, you have this feature because you have Rateview as well. So you should be able to see how many reports you have. So I think that gives us a little bit more leverage in a negotiation to know how strong our information actually is, to know how strong those averages are and what they're averaged out over. So to know that there's 66 lows in the past 2 weeks on that lane, that's kind of cool information to have. But as far as FreightWaves having an agenda, I mean, they're looking for investors. So, you know, they would want to show fairly accurate information because when the rates start going up, they start making money on it. So I'm not sure where any kind of manipulation would change that. So FreightWave sonar is a whole other product that maybe we'll get into another time. So we've been on almost 2 hours, a lot longer than I anticipated. Phone lines are still on. I had to double check that. If anybody has anything they want to talk about, 917-889-9924. Otherwise, I think we're going to wrap this up. I'm going to see if I have any cease and desist letters in my email. Freight futures. So I don't understand how manipulating the numbers today could affect the freight futures because they wouldn't want to show the numbers accurately because they can't. They are regulated by the SEC. So DAT, one of the things that has changed over the past about 2 years ago when they started being a contributor, they're regulated by the SEC. So the thing is they can't manipulate the numbers and they would not be able to change their systems midstream. So in other words, if whatever system they have today, they would have to make sure that it's consistent because let's say they show low numbers today. In 2 years, the investors want to see those numbers come up. Well, they can't manipulate the numbers to show that they're higher in 2 years if they're not. So FreightWaves, they're not in any situation. Because they're regulated by the SEC, they can't participate in the market itself. I'm not sure how that would benefit anyone. What do you think of brokers with low credit scores? Brokers with low credit scores. Well, let me show you something interesting. Let me scroll this down so I can see it. And if we go over here to the directory, and let me take a look at, there was a broker in particular that I could demonstrate with. That was in the rates and lanes group. Somebody was just talking about that. There was a broker that basically went bankrupt recently. Let me find it, and I'll pull that same data up right now, and then we'll wrap things up for tonight. Here it is. And it is, if I can find the DOT number. There it is. All right, so search directory. Let's research new business partners. I'm a carrier, and I'm thinking about working with a broker, new broker. So they're going to be my new business partner. Let's look for them. I can do it two ways. Docket number, DOT number, phone number, intrastate number, if they were, Texas intrastate or Kentucky intrastate or something like that. I can look them up over here, quick search, or I can go over here and look up by company name. Let's see. Broker carrier, carrier shipper. So let's do it this way. We'll look it up by DOT number. This particular DOT number, this is a broker that went out of business. 2830462. Right off the bat, the DAT directory. Warning, DOT number is inactive. Carrier authority is not active. They were a carrier and a broker, apparently. Let's look at the broker side. We've got a rating. Speed of payment, meh, not so good. Load as described, nah. I take all this with a grain of salt because people only leave reviews when they're upset about something. Very few people leave positive reviews. But if you look at this, their credit score, that was the question. Credit score was 90 with a 30 days to pay a year ago, 90-30, 90-30, 90-31. And that was pretty consistent all the way up till August of 2019. And then it dipped to 85-31, 70-34, 19 and 60 days to pay, 14 credit score, 14% basically, 87 days to pay. Basically, they're insolvent. And then it's pretty obvious when you look at these numbers here. And if those of you who are watching it on a phone probably can't see it. That's pretty small. Let me make it bigger for you. But these numbers here, your days to pay, and then, of course, the graph. Now, none of that is particularly good. 90% is... that alone is a red flag, but it was consistent. So a consistent 90% pay scale or score and a consistent roughly 30 days to pay, it's a red flag, but as long as it's consistent, I'm not that worried. But when you see this drop right here, that's really, really bad. Really, really, really bad. Right here in September of 2019, at that point, I would not have worked with them anymore. So what do I think of credit scores? When they're consistent, even if it's not a stellar credit score, it's a red flag. I'll question it. But as long as it's consistent, I'm not that worried. As soon as they show a fluctuation, 90 to 85, I got to stop working with them. Because this is exactly what happens. They were done. That was the first key that they were done, right there. I would not work with them anymore. And this is why. And so I found out about this on the Rates and Lanes group. Somebody posted, they did a load for them back in November, which was here. Or I guess, let's see, August, September, October. So this was November. Obviously, they didn't check their credit score ahead of time. So, absolutely, bad credit with a broker, stay away. Run away as fast as you can. Avoid them. Patriot Star includes DAT free to its customers. Yes, we include this version that I was showing you. And right now, until April at least, you're going to have Rateview as well. In April, and I don't necessarily have inside information, but I just heard some information. This version that I have is interesting. It's got some features, like, for example, I can do multiple searches at the same time. I can have different searches going. I could be searching for a truck on one side of the country, doing another search on the other side. It's got some features there. I could be doing multiple things at multiple times. Versus Trucker's Edge, you can do one search at a time. And then if I want to do another search, I don't even know how. A new search, I got to start all over, and I can do one at a time. And I used to be able to have, multiple windows open. But I think they made it so you can't even do that because every time you log in, it kicks you off the previous login. So Trucker's Edge is limited because you can only do one search at a time. Also, let's say there's a search and you do, let's say there's 15,000 loads out of point A to point B. You're only going to see the first 500 with the Trucker's Edge version. With the Power version, you see everything. So, it's neither here nor there, because if there's thousands of loads, they're going to be so far down the list that I probably wouldn't scroll to that anyway. But just the fact that you won't see some loads. Some loads are weeded out. And then the power version also gives you a couple minutes lead time. So if a load gets posted, when you have this version, it gets blasted here. Now, that being said, this is the Trucker's Edge user interface, but I'm logging into it with a power version login. So I have some of the same features here that I have with the actual power version. It's just the user interface is over here. But that being said, there are some people that complain about this. I don't necessarily mind it, but when you're working on a mobile thing, if you had 10 searches going, this screen ends up being all the way down here, and these are your load searches here at the bottom of the screen. And so you have to scroll this up out of the way to be able to see this. And then you don't see a lot. You see the basic information, similar like you see over here at Trucker's Edge. You see the basic information. But here, if you click on a load, all that information is displayed over here. With this one, you have to click on the load, and it opens it all up. But what's interesting is, with Trucker's Edge, you still have to click on each load, and then the information is displayed. With our version, you click on every load, and you can leave every load open if you want to display everything. Anything you're interested, you click on it, it stays there. And then, like I said, we can leave comments on those loads, and all the information is in one spot, which is kind of nice. However, they are updating it. One of the reasons that you occasionally have some outages or slow features happening with DAT is they're updating it. And in April, the new system is going to be coming out, and it's going to resemble this a little bit more. Not going to be exactly like this. We're still going to be able to do multiple searches and things with our version, but the user interface is going to be more like this. So this is difficult, especially if you're in a truck bouncing down the road and using a touch screen or something like this. This could be difficult. It's still, in my opinion, better than the other load boards that are out there. A lot better. And I like to be able to do multiple searches at a time, and to be able to see. We're also tied together. So, for example, I can see all the trucks in my fleet that are posted. Anybody in my fleet. So this is Richard, who is Triple V in the comments right there. Ontario, California, looking to go back to Las Vegas. This is my brother's truck in Ohio, looking to go to any of these locations. And these are inactive searches right now. So, and this is Richard again. So it's kind of nice to be able to see all that and do all those searches at the same time. Yes, but Freight Futures is only one of the many things they offer. They have sonar, and I use it, and I love it. I believe it has already paid for itself. I've never been approached about their Freight Futures. Their Freight Futures are a new product that they haven't necessarily started it, but they are in order to create Freight Futures, in order to have a Freight Futures market, you have to have the data to back it up. Like the oil futures market or anything else, you have to have the data to back it up. And until FreightWaves came up with sonar, there was no data. So they created sonar so they had something to support a freight futures market. That is the level of their involvement with the freight futures. That's really all there is. They created the freight futures market, but because they hold the data, they themselves can't participate in the freight futures market. So they themselves aren't doing the trading. The trading is held, and this gets above my pay grade here in a minute, but they do the trading. Again, it's all regulated with the SEC and so forth. Many times with power, I have to ring going off, but no new loads show until I refresh the page. But overall, I like it. Igor, Oregon. I don't know if you have this version that I'm showing you, or if you have Trucker's Edge Power. Trucker's Edge Power looks like this. And I don't know what you're looking at. But this is Trucker's Edge. This is, they call it Total Power Office, or Total Power. It's a different product. I like getting loads off our email blast. I don't post very often. And that's important. And that's what I was saying in the very beginning, Dave, before you came on. We could do pretty much without the load board. I think posting a truck is important, but we could do without the load board at all because we have so many contacts that send us information and send us available loads that posting your truck is secondary. As people come on and they build relationships, they know who to call and when to call and where to go and the lanes, and they start to develop their own contacts, and they don't necessarily need to look for loads. And I'll wrap it up with this. If anybody is relying completely 100% on a load board, building relationships and knowing who to call and working those relationships before you work the load board is probably going to give you better results in the end. And one last thing I was trying to go over with one of my other trucks, I'm going to do a whole video on this. This is like a 2-hour video. I don't know how I get on this and just talk for 2 hours, but this feature right here, lane makers. Now, Dave said he doesn't like lane makers, but I think lane makers is a pretty good tool, because here's how you would use it. Lane makers is another standalone product. Some of it is kind of built into DAT Power, but this is a premium version. I can see a little more information. Because I'm both a broker and a carrier, I can see both. So broker activity, carrier activity, full, partial, we'll go both. Trucks, Orlando, Florida. Whoops. This is getting ahead of myself. Trucks, vans, standard. Origin, Orlando, Florida. There we go. Orlando, Florida to, and you really have to actually put a lane in, and you have to be able to spell the city that you're going to, or at least somewhat. There, Atlanta. And what this does is vans, Orlando to Atlanta, broker activity. And what I just did there is looked at all the brokers that have loads from Orlando to Atlanta. Over the past 30 days, I can scroll this up 60 days, 90 days. But we'll look who has the loads over the past month. From the market area, I can go down to the 3-digit zip code or the region. We'll just go to the market area. Total Quality Logistics. Well, they have a lot of stuff moving from Orlando or from Florida to Atlanta. Total Quality Logistics usually comes up at the top of this list every time, because if you know how TQL works, they don't post loads, they post lanes. They just post Orlando to Atlanta, Jacksonville to Atlanta, Tampa to Atlanta, and they don't have any of those loads. What they have is stuff coming from Florida that's going to somewhere in Georgia. And when you call them, they'll say, well, we don't have that load, but we have this one that's similar. So they have people that are just trying to get phone calls. So they always come in every day, and they're always going to be at the top of this list because they're posting those lanes. But this one, Route Transportation and Logistics, they're out of Bradenton, Florida. So they have 37 loads posted. Yellow Diamond has 23 loads posted. BAT Logistics, 20 loads. So what you would do if you're trying to find a load, and this one in particular, they have 37 loads posted over the past 30 days, and 7 times they've searched for a truck. So what that means is, this is why this is important. And Dave, listen, because I know I mentioned this the other day. And then I'm done with this episode because it's 9 o'clock. Holy cow. What that means is they posted 37 loads. They only searched for trucks 7 times. So they're taking phone calls from trucks. So the load hits the board and they're waiting for calls. Instead of that, why not call them ahead of time and say, I'm looking for a load out of this market. I'm going to have a truck there on Friday. Can you call me when you have a load? Then before they post the load, they're going to call you. And that's how you start to develop relationships. So maybe you do that for this broker, this broker, this broker, this broker, this broker, and this broker. So you do the top 5 or 6 brokers. Now, every time you're in that area, this one had 23 postings, 0 truck searches. This one had 20 postings, 8 searches. So 8 times, almost 50% of the time, they had to look for a truck to move their load. Why not be the one that calls them? You call them and say, hey, I'm going to be there next week. I see you move 20 loads a month. You must move several every week. I'm going to be there on Thursday or Friday. Call me when you have a load. What have you got? So you do that with all of these. And I'm just using this as just an example lane. maybe this isn't the best lane to do it on. Maybe instead of Orlando to Atlanta or vice versa, you do Atlanta to Memphis or Atlanta to Dallas or Atlanta to Las Vegas. And you start to define the brokers that have those lanes. Then you flip it and you say, well, who's got the stuff coming back? Or maybe you develop a triangle and you do, so you do Atlanta to Memphis, you've got 5 brokers, and then you got from Memphis to Atlanta, you got 5 brokers. And then you got 5 brokers from Memphis to Toledo, and then from Toledo to Atlanta. And you develop those handful of brokers that you call every single time. So this is how this could be useful. I tried a version of a lane maker at Landstar. Typically, the agents that had moved loads lost the lanes. Well, we know that these were in the past 30 days. And maybe they have the lanes, maybe they don't. But when you're looking at brokers that happen to be in that area, so we're looking at Orlando to Atlanta, we're calling Yellow Diamond, whose location is in Atlanta. They have the customer is probably the receiver, so they're probably really close to there. Maybe they're a 3PL and they actually have an office in there. We don't know until we call them, but we start to develop it. We have 5 or 6 brokers that we call on a regular basis. Lane match is another thing that you kind of, and I don't know if that was from Landstar. I know the truckstop.com has something similar to that. But that's how you start to develop some relationships with these. All right, that being said, I've been talking. I had like a drop of water in here, and my cup went empty a long time ago. So I am going to wrap it up because I need some water, basically. That's the main reason. So otherwise, I could keep going unless anybody else has something to say. It's just another impromptu call-in session. And I had some callers, but nobody pushed the hot button to get on the air. So maybe next time. All right. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out a couple hours. Like I said, I'm going to start doing this, once or twice a week, just this impromptu stuff. And then I'm going to have some recorded stuff that I've already been working on. But I'd rather just get in front of the camera and talk, obviously. So let me close some of this stuff down. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out. And remember to aim high, dream big, plan, but strategize your plan. You got to earn your success because nobody deserves it. And get out there because only you drive you. Have a good night, everybody.